You're listening to Precinct 444, a podcast network from the National Law Enforcement Museum. Today we're bringing you an episode from Lifeline, offering a holistic wellness approach focused on supporting American law enforcement, promoting resilience, safety, and survivability.
Welcome to another episode of Lifeline. I'm Matthew Garcia, Program Manager for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund Ambassador Program and retired lieutenant from the Connecticut State Police. Today, we will look at the 2017 Las Vegas shooting and hear from those who responded. We'll also look at the Co-workers Retreat, a healing initiative through concerns for police survivors, and how it has been an instrumental part of the recovery for two officers. With me today are Captain Anthony Munoz from the Nevada Department of Public Safety Highway Patrol. Ant responded on October 1 and was part of the first wave of responding officers. Kendra Still is married to Ant and had just retired from the Nevada Department of Public Safety a week before the shooting. And Sergeant Max Morgan of the Utah County Sheriff's Department lost his partner, who was murdered on a traffic stop. Max found healing and recovery through the cops' Co-workers Retreat. Ant, would you please take us back to that day in October?
So it was obviously a day I'll never forget. My son had flown back to San Diego, so it was just a regular night. As night went on, the shooting occurred at the Route 91 Harvest Festival. Myself deployed, and I wasn't quite sure when the calls were coming out what exactly I was rolling into. So when I arrived on scene, it was obviously pure chaos, and I'm responding as a lieutenant at the time. And one of the biggest challenges is I want to respond as a trooper to where I can get out and be with everyone, but I got to realize I'm a lieutenant responsible for people in the field. So when I got in the area, the concert was attended by well over 20,000 people, and it was off the Las Vegas Strip, and it was in a fenced-in area, so there wasn't a lot of place. Once the shooting started, there was not a lot of place for people to go to funnel out. So that created some challenges and jammed up the roadways. So as I got close to the scene, my captain asked that I respond to the command post. And right or wrong, I'm very subordinate, but I couldn't do it. He was already in the command post, and I felt like I needed to be out in the field with my troops. So I end up rolling around. I get on the I-15, which is just west of the Mandalay Bay. And traffic is at this point at a complete stop on Interstate 15. And we don't know if we're sitting targets or what's going on, how many shooters there were, and what all is exactly transpiring. You know, are they setting something up on the south side of the strip to do something on the north end of the strip? Or is it an isolated shooter? We don't know any of this stuff at this time. So I stop out on I-15. And the graveyard lieutenant had made the amazing call to flip our traffic pattern on Interstate 15 to our what we call a New Year's Eve shutdown, where we shut down all the ramps and we can leave lanes of travel open. And they made a great call, and that saved a tremendous amount of lives because we had that lane dedicated to get cars through to their local hospitals, whether it was ambulances, law enforcement self-transporting, or civilians transporting. So that was one of the key calls of the night. And everything's in slow motion at this point. And I don't really realize the magnitude of it at this point. The first trooper I stopped out with was Trooper Travis Smacka. He was on the 15. I stopped out with him to check on him. And when I stopped with him, a truck immediately pulled up, a pickup truck. And in the bed of the truck, there was a bunch of bodies in the truck. And I'll never forget, there was a husband holding his wife, and her head she'd been shot in the head, no longer with us. And the husband was in shock, trauma, yelling, "We need to get to the hospital, didn't realize that his wife was unfortunately deceased. So we got that area kind of under control, and we had traffic flowing. So from there, my next thought is I need to check on my people. Where do we have everyone at? So we're coordinating with dispatch, and I was deemed the field operations commander at this point. So my first thing was to make sure that our highway patrol personnel, everyone's doubled up. There's nobody by themselves on the strip. And Las Vegas Metro Police Department did an amazing job with the response, getting everything locked down. There was a couple of troopers on the strip on Las Vegas Boulevard that didn't have anyone with them. And so I kind of filled in the gaps until we could get people there while I was monitoring everything. And I remember stopping out with Trooper Campos on Las Vegas Boulevard. And I remember getting out, I deployed my rifle and we're standing there. And that was a really eerie feeling because we didn't know if someone was going to be shooting down on us. We had no idea where our threat was. And that was really, at the time, you're not thinking about it. But once you have time to kind of digest everything, how vulnerable I really felt at that point. So we got troopers out with everyone. They were doubled up. And at this point, another call comes out at the Excalibur that there was a shooter in the Excalibur. So I responded from the north end of the strip towards the Excalibur, pulled in the Excalibur, and I remember putting my patrol car in park and not knowing what in the world I was going into. But you're in autopilot. I mean, this is why we train. It's kind of bad to say, but this is kind of the cool thing of the job where everything slows down and you're just kind of taking everything in slow motion. So getting the Excalibur, not knowing what to expect. And there was a few Metro Police Department officers there saying, hey, we don't have an active shooter here. And what happened was people were coming across from the concert venue, which was across the street, and they had been shot. And, unfortunately, 58 people were shot at the event. Well over 800 were injured or wounded. And they were coming into the Excalibur. So they thought there was a shooter, but there was no shooter. But what really, struck me, and I had a hard time getting over as I was responding. I was driving south on Las Vegas Boulevard, and like I said, everything's in slow motion. All the people that are waving their arms and wanting help that have been wounded, and I wasn't able to stop because I got to get to the Excalibur. And that haunted me for a long time because these people are looking at me, someone trusted in law enforcement for help, and I can't stop. I'm making eye contact with them, but I'm driving right by, and I'm not able to stop. That really affected me. So shortly after clearing the Excalibur, the details had come out that it was a solo shooter and everything was locked down. And it kind of slowed down. And we still had a hard time, getting everyone into the hospitals. We had us assisting Metro with assigning officers to the hospital. And by this time, it's probably 5 or 6 in the morning when everything winds down. And when you're in the middle of it, you don't really realize what's going on. It's not till you actually take that time to get home and decompress that you really realize what you went through. So I went home that night or that early morning, and I knew it was a big event, but my senses were still heightened, and I didn't really understand the level and everything of that we just went through the worst mass shooting in the history of the United States. And I think one of the things that night, and it's kind of hard for me to say because of all the tragedy that came out of it, but that was one of the proudest moments of my career that night. And again, I hate saying that because there was so much tragedy, but watching law enforcement, all first responders, and the community come together at that time and act as one, there were some truly heroic efforts. And I made it a point before I went home to stop out with all my guys and shake their hands and give them a hug and tell them how much I appreciate and love them for being out here because we didn't know what this was. So I had that comfort in my heart when I got home. And when I woke up, it really hit me when I saw the news reports and I kind of saw the aftermath of what had happened, what we had all just been through. And that was kind of the start of traumas that were hitting me. Leading up to that, I had been involved as a supervisor in 2 OISs, and they both affected me differently. And this one was not like those 2. I decompressed from those 2 with the 2 previous OISs with, after one, we had driven by the scene a couple of days later, my wife and I just lost it crying. And I told her, I said, you know what, if something would have happened and I would have been shot and God forbid something happened, I'm okay with it. I've lived a good life. I have an amazing wife. I've raised 2 amazing kids. I'm good with it. This one was a little different. And it took 2 days to kind of really decompress. And what was really alarming when this was said and done is in law enforcement, we're not really taught how to decompress and that we're going to decompress and different things that we're going to go through. So about 2 nights later, I woke up in the middle of the night and I was staring at my wife and I'm looking at Kendra and she wakes up. When you're sleeping, you can feel someone staring at you. And I had that death stare going through her and she woke up and I wasn't okay. And I told her, I want to hurt you. Like, I want to punch you. I had so much rage going through my body. She put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You're decompressing. It's okay." And that was really the first time where I wasn't okay, because you're always taught that as a cop, I'm going to be fine. This is what I do. And all those traumas over the years have kind of accumulated in this event. They've all built up, and it started really to spill over. And I was in a bad spot from everything that had happened that night. There was some other stuff going forward. I got through that, and I didn't see any counseling. I didn't seek counseling. And that day that I woke up and raged with Kendra, I made one of the hardest phone calls in my life. I called my immediate supervisor and told her, "Hey, man, I'm messed up. I'm mentally not in a good spot. I need to talk to somebody." And the response I got was, "You responded as a lieutenant that night. I'm sure you're fine. Just talk to a peer counselor." And that didn't sit right with me. And I didn't reach out to the peer counselor. Peer counseling has its place, but I kind of felt like I was in a spot where I needed more than a peer counselor, and I wasn't offered the help. So I kind of just, I'll handle it myself, which is probably the worst thing I could have done in that situation.
You compartmentalized a lot the night of the shooting. You even talk about, the triaging and the effects of triaging. And I don't think we teach that when we go through the academy and through training. We're taught how to triage, but we're not really taught the impact it has when you have to pass certain people over. And you compartmentalizing all that, did you feel that all that was now starting to catch up? Everything you did that night to sort of shut off the emotions and put yourself on autopilot, was that all catching up with you?
It absolutely was. I mean, and there's a lot that, went into it. I truly care about my people. I love them to death. They go out and do God's work every day. And I can remember, too, those things that would stick with me. There was one in particular. Jake Fisher was a trooper at the time. He's now a lieutenant that I work with. But he was going in one of the first strike teams that was going into Mandalay Bay. And I remember pulling over as I was driving, like, "Hey, man, do you want my ballistic helmet?" And he's like, "No, I'm good." And I wanted so bad to trade places with him because I didn't want anything to happen to Jake. I wanted to put myself in his way, but you got to realize, as a lieutenant, that's not really my job. I'm there to oversee what's going on. So a lot of that stuff with, cops going in to these situations and you're not, that kind of wore on me as well. And again, we're not trained in that. When you start promoting up the ranks, you're not trained on those mental and physical responses that you're going to have, because I kind of took it like I'm sitting in the background and sending them in, which isn't the case. I mean, they're highly trained and highly skilled. We prepare for this incident. And I think that's why, I don't want to say it went well, but our response was amazing in law enforcement because we prepare for this. But as a supervisor, as a human, I want to be the one going in. But you have to realize my value comes from making sure all the resources and assets are in place to make things effective. So those are things that I compartmentalized as well, and I didn't deal with. Like, what ifs. You play the what if game all the time, and it's never what if something goes good. You're always what ifing it on the bad side. And I think that's one thing I've trained myself to start what ifing if things go well. And that's something now that I haven't gone through this experience, I can pass on to those that I work with and supervise. Don't always get in that mindset that everything's going to go terrible. What if it on the good side? But back to your original, I compartmentalized a lot of that stuff, and I didn't really know how to deal with it.
As everything is coming back to you, Kendra's watching what's happening to you. And Kendra, you retired just 1 week prior to the shooting. In fact, you weren't even taken off of the call-out rosters. So you're sitting home and you're hearing everything, and you're actually getting phone calls as they're taking a head count as to what resources and who's available. And you're getting a phone call as if you're still on the job, but you're actually listening to everything unfold, knowing your husband is a first responder out there, and you're not able to go, and you're newly retired. And so there had to be that pull upon you, because now you're sort of in a dual role, if you will.
Yeah, it was, there were a lot of feelings that I experienced because I wanted to be in there with him, with my brothers and sisters, fighting the fight as well. But now I'm getting a good, healthy dose across the face of reality of, hey, you're not a cop anymore. You have to just sit back. Then, I'm feeling anger because my retirement, my medical retirement was due to the actions of a drunk driver. So I'm having anger there because now I want to do something and I can't do it anymore because of somebody else's actions. And then that of a spouse, there's a lot that I took for granted being an officer and him being a sergeant and a lieutenant. When I was still a trooper, I could turn on the radio and I could monitor. And I knew that, okay, he'll be out with these two other officers. And as long as these other two officers are responding, I know that he's okay. He's code 4. I don't have to worry about him. Now that we're retired, I lose all communication. I can't hear, I can't monitor the radio. There's that control that we have when we're in law enforcement where we can monitor everybody's radio traffic and figure out where everybody's at. And now I don't have that. And instead, I have dispatch who's calling me, and every single time that they called, it was like, fight or flight kicks in, and that feeling that just drops to the pit of your stomach where this is not right, something's not right. The doom of the phone call, the thing that I dread the most, is now occurring, only to be told, oh, sorry, your name's not taken off that roster. So now you're going right back into, okay, he's good, he's okay. Let's go back to basically, I would say, triaging the household and him and trying to monitor all of that. It's like Ant was talking about, we always think about the negative side of things, the bad things that happen, negativity bias. We don't, when our sergeants call us into the office, we're not thinking, oh, yay, Publishers Clearinghouse finally showed up and they're going to pay me $1 million from here on out. We're thinking, okay, what did I do? Did I, am I going to get written up or whatever? You always think about the negative thing. That's part of our humanistic side. It's kept us alive for all these years, is you prepare for the worst. And that's what I was doing. But when he deployed, I just, there was a lot of emotions, but I just had to, put a lot of trust in my faith and my belief that he would be okay. And then I knew that coming out of it, I was going to have to be super strong for him, because I knew that was going to be the time that I had to step up.
Do you think because you didn't respond and you weren't in the middle of that chaos, that you were in a better position from the outside, so to speak, to actually to help, because you weren't dealing with the same things that Ant was? Had you been there, and had you experienced, the loss of life and the trauma and the chaos, do you think that may have made it harder for you to help Ant as he was going through his trauma? Because you would have been dealing with similar issues, but because you were not at the scene and you were removed from the physical scene, you were in a better position to see and understand what was going on with Ant without your own trauma coming into play.
Oh, absolutely. I think, most definitely, because it's not so much, I don't want to use the word healthy, but if you have one person in crisis, it helped immensely that I was there to help him. If we had both been deployed and now we're both in a crisis state, it's that, I don't think that would have been too conducive to me being able to help him, because I'm trying to help myself. You got to take care of yourself before you can help others. It's like when the plane's going down, you put your oxygen on first and then help others. And I wouldn't have been able to help him if I was sitting there trying to put my own oxygen mask on. So it did work out. There was a lot of good things that came from it. And I'm a firm believer in everything works out the way that it's supposed to. And yeah, being there for him, I needed all of that strength and the ability to be there, to be strong and supportive of him during his time. So that really worked out.
As a spouse of somebody who's responding to this, what did you go through yourself?
Like I said before, the lack of control, not knowing. Out on the road, I could, if I knew that there was something to where I needed to get to him, I knew I had that ability. If he, God forbid, got hurt, I could facilitate getting to him no matter what. That wasn't an option now being, I would guess, to say a regular spouse. Now where I didn't have police powers, I didn't have lights and sirens, I didn't have a radio. So now I'm sitting at home and just listening to him was just, when he came home, I could see it. I could see the stress. And going through my schooling, I knew of PTSD and all of that and the traumatic events. And I knew that the emotions that he was feeling, and with all of the mental health side of things and PTSD, they always say that what you're experiencing is normal. It's normal experiences to an abnormal event. So I knew the anger and stuff was him decompressing, and I understood that. But there was also times where I felt super helpless because, I can't stand up and help him fighting that battle within himself. And then to hear him go and ask his supervisors for help and then to be turned away, that stung a lot. And that's when I made it my mission to make sure that there wasn't another incident that was created like that, to where somebody would go without help. So it's, as a wife, it's hard. It's really, really hard to be a wife of a cop. It's something that shouldn't be taken lightly. It's they serve just as much as the officers, and I'm seeing that now. I never really understood it. When I was single or I was a cop and he was a cop, but being at home and not having the ability to fully know everything that he's doing or that he's okay, that's a lot. That's a heavy burden sometimes.
And you're experiencing it firsthand now, and I think it's hard to convey that to an officer what the spouse is going through, but because you've now seen it from both sides, you have an appreciation for it. Mm-hmm. And Ann, you're not one to reach out for help, so that wasn't easy for you to make that to make that call.
No, I'm very good at keeping things inside and just dealing with it my own way and avoiding things. And this led to, I consider myself to be, I love to laugh. I love to tell jokes, and I was not myself. And I didn't realize I wasn't myself until talking with Kendra. I mean, I'd go to work, come home, turn the TV on, do nothing, go to work, come home, didn't have any hobbies, didn't have much of anything. And I love sports, and I would always, I'm going to watch sports and veg out for 3 hours. And that wasn't helpful because I'm vegging out, but I'm doing it to not deal with problems. Or you start scrolling on your phone. You can only scroll on Facebook for so long. You're looking at the same stuff. But what I realized, once I actually dove into it, I was doing that to avoid. You're scrolling Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You're just looking at the same thing over and over. But while you're doing that, you don't have to deal with what's going on inside of you. And I was just in a bad cycle. And that went on till 2020, when one of my best friends, Sergeant Benjamin Jenkins, was murdered on a traffic stop. And that completely sent me over the edge. And here I think I'm in a good spot. I don't realize I'm not myself. In my mind, everything's good. But when he was murdered, it really pushed me over the edge. And I like to kind of use the analogy. If you have a big semi truck driving down the road and you take your traumas from childhood till current date, you're just piling those traumas in that trailer. Eventually that trailer, the walls are going to cave in, the tires are going to pop, and you're going to have chaos. and my trailer disintegrated. Unfortunately, I had an amazing support system at home, and I'm so thankful for Lieutenant Scrivener. He saw it in me, and he told me one day, after Ben had been murdered, and I signed you up for counseling. You don't have a choice. You're going. And he signed me up for appointments with the doctor. And I went. And it was probably the best move I ever made in my life. Being able to talk about things from work and, going back to childhood traumas and start working through these things, and kind of lost myself for a while. And, the doctor really brought it out. And it was some of the easiest things to do. I can remember as a young troop, people would always say, go for a walk. Go for a walk. And I never knew what going for a walk meant. In my mind, I'm not going for a walk. I'm going to go run. If I get in a fight, I don't want the guy coming to save me that goes for a walk twice a week. I want the guy that's running every day. But what I learned when you go walk, especially as a cop, we're wired from the time we hit that patrol car, we're go, 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 go. And we miss so much stuff around us because we're usually told where to go. We're point A to point B, handle a problem, point A to point B, solve a problem, and that's our day. But what it really forced me to do, and the doctor asked me during our first counseling session, have you ever been on a walk? And I was probably 43 years old, and I had to think about it. I've never really been on a walk where it was just me, no dog, no iPhone, no devices. And I went on that first walk, and I walked down, and I hit the sidewalk in front of our house, and immediately my body was saying, okay, run, get your heart rate up, because that's what we're conditioned to do. And it was so hard just to walk. But what I found was when you walk, it's just you and your thoughts. And you're noticing things you've never noticed before, and it forces you to slow down. So now, the light bulb went off in my head. This is why walks are so important, because you're forced to deal with things and slow everything down. And at this point, we'd lived in our house for probably 4 years. And I went walking, and I noticed stores and houses that I didn't even know were there, because I get in my car and I just go. We call on duty from our residence and we go. So that really forced me to slow down. And that was probably my biggest takeaway. I mean, it was awesome talking with the doctor and getting stuff out, because I keep stuff very close I don't share with a lot of people. But having to open up and actually deal with things, going on walks, it was life-changing for me. And that led into the Concerns of Police Survivors retreat that I went on after Sergeant Jenkins, after he was murdered. They have a couple different retreats. It's an amazing program. They have a retreat for spouses, and then they have one for coworkers as well. Well, Ben's wife, Jody, had gone to the spouses retreat. And when she got back, she called and said, Aunt, you're going to the coworkers retreat. You're signed up. You don't have a choice. Yes, ma'am, I'm going.
Why was she so adamant that you go? Where were you?
So I was just in a bad spot. And she went, and she was kind of in the same spot. I mean, man, her husband was just murdered. And she went to that retreat, and it was life-changing for her. So it was the impact that it had on her, she knew it would have the same impact on me. And I'm so thankful that she kind of forced me into going. And because there I was dealing with not only Ben, but I was able to deal with everything leading up to that in my career. And that was an interesting experience as well, flying out to St. Louis for the Concerns of Police Survivors, the coworkers retreat. So the way it works, you fly in, it's a 3 or 4 day long retreat. You're in a cabin off in the woods in Missouri, real peaceful. It's on a lake. But when I got to the airport, they put you in a big ballroom, and there's shuttles that take you over. So I'm flying in, and it took a lot for me to build up the courage to go, okay, I'm going to go deal with my best friend's death. So I get into that ballroom, and I walk in, and everyone is partying, hooping and hollering, hugging, high-fiving, and having a great time. And in my mind, I'm like, what am I getting myself into? And they had different shuttles that were going that were spaced out. I purposely didn't get on that first shuttle because I'm like, these guys are here to party. And I wanted no part of that. I wanted to heal. So I let the first bus go, and I'll get on the second bus. Well, second bus comes around, and it's the same thing. People are rolling in, and it's like we're at a high school reunion. Everyone's happy to see each other. It's like, okay, well, I'm here. I'm in Missouri. I'm not in Las Vegas. It's not like I can hop in the car and drive home. So I got on the bus, and we drove to the resort, and I got there and it was more of the same. And I'm really regretting going. And that first night, they kind of talk to you about everything. There's more doctors on site that come in and talk to you. And I ended up, they offer one-on-one counseling sessions with doctors that first night. So I'm like, okay, I'm here, I'm going to do it. And I met with Dr. Nikki, and she was a lifesaver. She's from Arkansas. I still keep in touch with her. She was awesome. We went and met, and she's like, okay, I'm going to do some EDMR, I believe it was called, with the rapid eye movement, or EMDR. EMDR. And she says, you're going to think this is completely crazy, but hear me out. I thought the same thing when I first went through it and I heard about it. And we got into things, and it's to kind of picture, it's kind of like doing standardized field sobriety tests, horizontal gaze and nystagmus. You're following a finger, she's tapping on your leg. And when I was done, and you're talking through traumas as she's doing this, and when we were done that night, I had never slept so well in years. And the way it was explained was she's basically rearranging my thought process. Like I talked about earlier, was what if it the wrong way? Fight or flight kicks in, you always go to the bad. So we talked that night a lot about Ben, a lot about 1 October. And she kind of taught me to prioritize, when I think of Ben or I think of 1 October, think of the good that came out of it. So now, and she kind of brought up a good point, one of the things that haunted me, like I said, was driving down Las Vegas Boulevard and not being able to stop to help people. And that crushed me. And she kind of put it in line. She's like, well, at least those people were able to walk and they were moving. They were still alive. They're okay. You got to where you needed to be. So now when I think about either Ben or that event, it's always the good. When I think about Ben, I think about all the amazing memories we had, the nights we shared together, the funny stuff when you're a partner in a patrol car, you get in and you talk about some crazy things. And we were in tears most nights from laughing because he is as country as can be. I'm a city boy from the inner city, and we came together and we had nothing in common, but we had everything in common. And I FTO'd him. I was his primary FTO, picked him up first day of work. We ended up being squad mates, and I was his sergeant. So we had an amazing relationship. And so now when I think about him, those are the things I think about. Or when I think about 1 October, I think about the acts of heroism that came out of that night and how proud I was to be there with my brothers and sisters from every agency in the Valley to make everything safe as quickly as possible. So the next day at the retreat, it hits me. Everybody that's at this retreat has a Ben Jenkins. They've lost someone extremely close to them, and this is their support system. So yes, they're happy to see each other because they've all gone through the same traumas that I went through. And this is their healing and coping mechanism, and they are a family. So once that light bulb came on, that's what we were doing there, the retreat opened up, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. But it just took that I had to see what it was all about, and I had to learn from myself. And once I did, I said, it's one of the most amazing things. And when I came home from that retreat, I'm sure Kendra will attest to it, I was in such a better place. I was sleeping well. I had my hobbies back. I started playing golf. Now I'm watching sports to break down things and to dissect, the intricacies of the game, not to veg out. So going to that retreat was life-changing. We've come so far in law enforcement to where we are, even, with the highway patrol, we are light years ahead of where we were in 2017. And sometimes it takes tragedies to fix things, but I'm so proud of where we're at now as an agency and going forward, dealing with mental health. And it's a completely different ballgame between now and even going back 2016 to 17. We have officers involved in critical incidents. We have things in place to deal with them and let them know we care about you as a person, not just a trooper or a badge number driving down the road. So you always got to take the good that comes out of tragedy. And there was definitely a lot of good that came out of my tragedies.
Max, you've got your own journey that brought you to cops co-worker retreat, and you were in a dark place as well that brought you there. When you and I were talking, you shared some of the similar first impressions that Ant had in there. If you would kind of bring us to that point, what that got you to that coworkers retreat, why you needed to go, and how it helped you as well through your own crisis.
Yeah, and Anthony's he's exactly right. So like I think in law enforcement we get taught, we get trained as we stay in the fight, we stay in the fight. We go home at night, we go home at night. I mean, there's all these classes in the academy, all these trainings we do that I know of. There's never a class that teaches us what to do when one of our brothers or sisters doesn't go home. And you talk about decompressing and how to deal with that. And we don't have any idea how to deal with it. We're not taught that. We're not taught that you're going to hit a decompression stage, that that the bottom's just going to fall out. And so we train so much on everything else, we don't know anything about how to deal with things when they happen, the really bad stuff. So a little bit about my story is in January of 2014, my sergeant was killed. Sergeant Corey Ride was killed January 30th, 2014. On a few days, about 10 days before that, I had a coworker who had ended up killing his mother-in-law and killed his wife and then killed his 2 kids and then himself. That we ended up on that scene that night. And just a completely, I just never thought something like that was possible, especially from somebody that I knew. And, I wouldn't say he was a great friend, but I think a lot of people we work with, we call them our friends. And so I knew the guy pretty well. My wife knew his wife really well. But just made you start to question so many things. About 5 days after that, things at home weren't good. I ended up moving out of my house 5 days before the shooting. And then come January 30th, my sergeant pulled off the side of the road to help somebody that had their flashers on. Anyway, 17-year-old girl was driving, I think he was about 36 years old, guy in the passenger seat. And through the interaction, my sergeant went up to the truck once and came back and went back and forth a couple times. Just something really weird going on. And then the guy in the truck ended up opening the back window and pointing his gun out the window, and he shot my sergeant through the windshield. First round hit him right above the right eye. Second round hit him in the jugular. And so it was cold. It was January 30th in Utah. It was snowy. The roads were icy. Visibility was low, but I knew where he was at. And the dispatch had tried to get a hold of him, and he didn't answer his code 4 checks. They tried to call him on the phone, didn't answer. So they called me and asked if I would go find him. Well, I knew right where he was. I knew he'd been there on that motorist assist. He hadn't gone to anything else. I was about a mile and a half from him. And I put that Chevy Tahoe as fast as it could go, regardless of the icy roads, anything. And I knew from the second I headed his direction that it was bad. I knew it was bad. I got there, pulled up behind him, and I walked up to the driver's door, and that's when I saw him that he'd been shot in the head. I walked around to the passenger side, looked in the window, trying to see what I could see, if there was anything. I can still describe almost 10 years later exactly what the inside of that car looked like. What color of straw he had in his styrofoam cup, what he had for lunch on the passenger seat, everything. Then I walked back to the front of the car, and I just kind of turned my face facing the car. And there was 3 rounds through the windshield and 4 rounds in the hood of that car. And I instantly thought it was an ambush. And I thought, holy crap, this is where it all ends right here, and I thought that, because the car wasn't there anymore that he pulled up behind. And so we didn't know, okay, was that an ambush? Is there, and I'm like, all right, is there people behind me in the bushes? and they're just going to start picking us off as we show up. And you have so many things in the matter of a couple seconds run through your head, right? Things at home weren't good. Didn't talk to my kids that morning. All kinds of different things. And I thought this is all my family and my kids and my friends are going to know, is that, I'm going to end up taking one right in the back of the head here before I can even turn around and fight. Obviously, and so, we're taught, or I don't know if we're taught, or we just assume in law enforcement that, nothing's supposed to affect us, and we're not supposed to admit we're scared, but I was really scared. And I turned around. Obviously, they're gone. There's nothing there. But it was so hard to deal with that stuff that I'd felt, and the feelings that I'd felt. About 30 minutes later, one of my other coworkers caught up to him, and he opened the back window and he shot my other coworker through the windshield and hit him in the head. That coworker, Greg Sherwood, was able to recover. It took 3 years, and he actually came back to work. Very, very good friend of mine. So things were just a mess. I mean, I was just like, holy crap, what more can go wrong? By the way, you should never ask that, because there's always more that can go wrong. And that was, like I said, that was in January, and I didn't know how to deal with anything. I couldn't sleep. Like I said, I wasn't living at home. I'd get maybe an hour of sleep a night, probably at the most, but I couldn't shut my brain off. I couldn't, and I wasn't having nightmares, but so I'd go to the gym late at night to try and make myself physically tired. That didn't work. Whatever. I drank too much. So I'm trying to deal with this in all unhealthy ways. Around August, I got a call from a kid in California, and he said, "Hey, you don't know who I am, but I want you to go to this cops coworkers retreat with me back in St. Louis." And I said, "What is it?" And he says, "Well, we go, we talk. There's professional counselors there. We have a debriefing." And I said, "Nope, I won't do it." I said, "I had a debriefing at my department. I hated it. It was the worst thing I'd ever gone through next to that day, and I won't do another debriefing again." And anyway, he ended up talking me into going. Like amped, we got to the airport and go into that room where everybody's waiting, and you just kind of go in and sit down. And I came with 3 guys from my department, and so I kind of just hung with those guys. I just kind of and get on the bus, go to Potosi, and as you get off the bus in Potosi, I mean, that's a big thing. They wait for you. I mean, they get a phone call that's saying, "Hey, we're, a couple minutes out," and they're just lined up out on the sidewalk waiting for you. And there's no way you're not getting off that bus without getting hugged by 25, 30 people. And they're laughing and they're smiling and they're joking. And the same as Ant, if I could have turned around and got on that bus or stolen a car out of the parking lot, I'd have headed back to the airport and gone back home. I was like, this is a bunch of crap, because I was a mess. And I'm like, why are these people laughing? I mean, I've been going through the worst time of my entire life. And so you get in there, and really through the week, what I learned was, Saturday morning you have your debriefing, and cops does a really good job with they research your officer's death, whether it was a felonious death, whether it was a traffic accident, whether it was a medical, and they put you in like groups. And the thing that I struggled with, one of the things I struggled with so bad, was nobody in my department understood what I went through. Nobody's ever in my department rolled up on one of their coworkers and found him murdered. And the things that I went through, and I just didn't feel like anybody understood me. So when I went into that debriefing Saturday morning, there were 11 or 12 people in there, and it took me a long time to tell my story. They nicknamed our group the train wreck group because we were a mess. Everybody in that room was a mess. But the girl next to me from Wisconsin, she starts to tell her story, and I'm like, holy crap. She gets it. She understands what I've been going through. She's seen some of the same things, not exactly, but some of the same things I have. And she gets it. And the guy next to her tells his story and he gets it. And I'm just going, all of a sudden, like, as these people are telling their stories and everybody in the room, you know, it's an emotional debriefing, but everybody in the room, you just start gaining this close bond with these people. And they become your lifelong friends. So yeah, this year, this last September first weekend of October of this year was the 10th time I've gone back to coworkers retreat. I haven't missed a year since that first year. And now I'm the one that's laughing and joking, and I'm having a good time. I'm having a great time. I mean, these are my people. I'm excited every year to go there because these are the people that get me. These are the people that understand me. These are the people that's helped me through my trauma and helped me to figure life out. I've had people fly across the country. Back in 2021, both my daughters got married in the same year, and I had people fly out and come to my daughter's weddings and hang out, and we've done road trips. You know, so shortly after my first coworkers retreat, that next February of 2015, I had my best friend and my brother commit suicide. And I thought I was doing really good after that first coworkers, and then my brother's suicide just dropped me. But the cool thing is it was the guys from the coworkers retreat that called me and wanted to know how I was doing, wanted to know what I needed, and can they come out and hang out with me and things like that. And then again, I had a daughter that July that was in a horrible car accident and died once as she was being transported in Lifeline. Ended up getting her back. But again, my people from the COPS organization are all the ones that reached out to me. We got my daughter home about 3 days before my second coworkers retreat, and I just barely moved back home. And I told my wife, I says, "Oh, by the way, on Thursday, I'm leaving for St. Louis to go to the coworkers retreat." And she begged me not to go. I mean, my daughter was completely bedridden. We had to lift her out of the bed to be able to even get her into the bathroom or into a wheelchair or anything. And she's like, "I can't do this by myself." And she begged and begged me not to go. And I told her, I said, "I don't think you understand how bad I have to go." And I went back my second year, again, was able to deal with my stuff through EMDR, through my people there, through the counselors. And it's absolutely life-changing. I mean, I was at a spot where I didn't want to live anymore and contemplated some pretty serious things. And I 100% attribute me being here and my life being saved by the COPS organization and this coworkers retreat.
How does someone go about getting in touch with the organization, Concerns of Police Survivors, if this is something that they need?
So, and absolutely, if they've been through something like this, that's absolutely something they need, whether they know it yet or not. But the cool thing about this is the coworkers retreat is 100% confidential. There are still people that go every year, and they just use vacation time in their department because they're nervous to tell their department that they're going to a retreat to get some mental health help. I think across the country, we are doing a way better job with that than we did 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. My department does a phenomenal job with the mental health side of things. But you can go to National Concerns of Police Survivors.org, and on there they have a tab that says hands-on programs. We do 12 hands-on programs a year, and one of those is the coworkers retreat. And you can just click on that and you can register. And depending on what state you're in, most states, they all have local chapters of the COPS organization that will help with your travel to get to St. Louis. And then everything once you're there is paid for. The national office takes care of everything. The rest of your transportation out there, your food, your lodging, everything. It's all taken care of. So it's a free trip for most anybody that wants to go. And I will challenge anybody that's thinking about it that it will 100% change their life. And they will walk away from there. They'll be a better husband, a better father, or a better spouse. I talked to a guy this year, and he was having a hard time because had just gotten divorced. And I told him by being there is going to make him even be a better ex-husband and a better dad to his kids. And the cool thing is like my first and second year, I really was there very selfishly just for me and the things that I needed. Now that I've been there, this was my 10th year, and I keep going back, for one, because that's my people, but I want to help the people that it's their first year and second year, because I've been there. I know what it's like, and I know they can get past that. I know they can get to a better spot and get to a place where they're now laughing and joking with us as the other people are getting off the bus and we're having a good time.
No, we've had a very close relationship with concerns of police survivors. Connie Moyer, national president, sits on our board of directors, and COPS is just such a huge part of Police Week and the Candlelight Vigil and everything that they do for survivors, and being able to see that come to fruition, especially during Police Week, and then all of the other programs that they have they have throughout the year. And Max, your testimony and yours as well speaks to just that strength that comes from sharing your story and being around others who understand what it is that you've gone through. Kendra, what did you notice? What did you notice in Ant when he came back?
It was night and day. Like Max, he was only sleeping maybe a maximum of 4 hours, and that's being, on the high side. But he wasn't sleeping. He was just coming in. Any joy out of life had all but gone. I love the outdoors. I love being outside. Spend a lot of time with my horses and stuff. And he was sitting on the couch with we have like the plantation shutters that really make it dark, and those were drawn all the time. He was constantly watching TV or on his cell phone, like perusing stuff. He was just checked out, and he was so angry. And to be around him was, you could feel the tension and the anger coming off from him. He was withdrawn, didn't say much. So then when he went to the retreat, he came back, and I had my husband back. He was jovial. He was laughing again. He was, we would sit there and, poke fun at each other and have a fun time. We were going out on dates again, and he was sleeping. He was sleeping. The very first night he came back, he slept for 9 hours. And that was something that I totally I wasn't used to, because that, looking back, he hadn't slept well since the very first OIS that he had experienced, the one where he had broke down and cried. And it had just been compounding all that time. So even just when he called me, though, he would call me once or twice or text me something when he was at the retreat. And he said that it was making a huge difference. And he was really happy with himself and his progress that he had made. So when he came back and I saw it, it was different as night and day.
What would you share with the other spouses out there that were in your position?
You would have to it's going to take a lot of patience, a lot of support, a lot of understanding, and just listen. I know that Max had alluded to, he and his wife went to the spouses retreat at the COPS, that COPS put on, and I would like to hear more about that. It's, the people, the men and women who choose this profession, they're a different breed, but they're a different breed, and that's a good thing. It takes a tough person to go and run in when all hell was breaking loose and everybody's running out. It takes a different breed. But with these superpowers or Superman cape, Superwoman capes on, we have to remember too that there's also a humanistic side of that, and we can't be tough all the time. Whether we're currently acting retired, there's demons that I'm fighting after I retired that I didn't know bothered me. But we have to understand that we're all human. We all have a breaking point, and we all just need to be supported. And for a spouse, just understand that supporting that spouse is huge. And if there's, show them grace. If there's some days where they don't, if they come home and they don't want to talk about what's happened at work, or they're a little bit more pointed or short-tempered, allow them that courtesy of being able to be that way, because there's stuff that we see in our jobs that nobody should have to see. So we're just trying to deal with it the best that we can, and spouses just be there to support them.
And you and Max had talked about people in your lives who you didn't understand what you were going through. Departments didn't have resources at the time, and feeling on an island and all that. And Kendra, you're now in a position to actually affect change at the organizational level, and you're also working on your doctorate as well. Why don't you share a little about the work you're doing, both from a research standpoint and also your new position that allows you access now to actually make a difference, be part of that solution?
So after my accident on work, I ended up, because of the head-on collision, I had my neck fused and I had a traumatic brain injury that made my short-term memory just, it shot it. And I dealt with depression and anxiety because it was the frontal lobe where my brain bleed was located. And I had a neurologist that told me that the best way to fix it was to use it. So I went back to school and I finished up my bachelor's. And then I went on with my master's, and I received my master's of arts, mental health counseling, crisis response, and trauma, because I wanted to help officers with PTSD and mental health awareness overall for law enforcement officers. And as I started delving in more into the stressors facing law enforcement officers, that's when I really started to understand that the organizational stress plays a significant role in the mental health of our law enforcement officers as well. We talk about post-traumatic stress ad nauseum all the time. What we don't talk about, and I think should be normalized, is post-traumatic growth as well. You have an equal balance of everything. Everything's balanced, a healthy balance. So post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress can occur, but one of the things that negatively impacts the formation of PTSD is support, organizational support from family and friends. And that can lead to post-traumatic growth, where you can come out of a traumatic event and have a more fulfilling life, have a stronger faith, be stronger in your relationships and stuff like that. And it starts with the organization. And I saw it firsthand with Anthony. So after realizing that, I went ahead and said, screw it, I'm going to go even deeper into debt, and let's go for a PhD. So I'm getting my PhD in criminal justice leadership. And then I currently just 2 weeks ago accepted a position with my department, Nevada Department of Public Safety, as our wellness program manager. And I hope to implement a lot of programs that not only affect change with how we deal with the occupational stressors, like your OISs and your use of forces and stuff like that, but also the organization. I think if we get our organizations healthy and strong, then our officers are going to be healthy and strong. So, and that affects everybody from the officer's family, to the organization, to the community itself.
Thank you. Thank you. Max, how do you feel today as far as all the work you've done, attending the programs, your being on the job? How's your approach to it these days?
I'm doing good. And I know everybody, when you ask anybody, once they've been through something, they're like, I'm good, I'm fine, but it'll be the 10-year anniversary here this January of Corey's death. And I'm really in a good place. There's been a lot of good come from it. And I know we got asked that question this year at our retreat. What's something good that's come from your officer's line of duty death? I don't know that I could have told you anything year one or two that there was anything good. But I think across the country we're doing a lot better. I think the COPS organization is phenomenal in officer wellness and taking care of officers that have been affected by a line of duty death and families that have been affected by a line of duty death. I've seen it firsthand. It's a phenomenal organization, but it gives me tools to come back to my agency and help people in my department, help people that are struggling. And it's not even just maybe with the line of duty death, but with anything, any kind of the traumas. In law enforcement, and I think probably most anything, it's not just the traumas of law enforcement, it's all the accumulative stress of everything else, of home and bills and relationships and work and everything. But having the tools to be able to know how to deal with them and deal with them as they come, it's life-changing. And it's so nice to be able to help others in the department and around the country to be able to have these tools. I'm proud that I'm in a place where I'm at, and I know that it's possible for those that are really struggling. I know we try, and I think when we come home, I think a lot of times, kind of to Kendra's point, in law enforcement, we come home and we're taught that nothing's supposed to affect us. We're supposed to be big, bad, and tough, but then we don't want to bring that home either, and either show weakness to our spouse or protect them. We're trying to protect them. And so a lot of times we get home and we don't want to talk to them about it. And then our wives don't know how to talk to us about it, right? The coworkers for spouses retreat that we have, it's phenomenal. I took my wife last year, and we will be going again, but she was able to talk with the counselors, with the group of spouses, and say, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I'm dealing with when he comes home and doesn't want to talk or whatever. And they have all kinds of classes, how do I talk to it? How do I talk to my spouse after there's been a traumatic event, kind of a thing. But it's helped open up lines of communication that weren't really there before. And probably to my own fault, I didn't have those lines of communication open. But it's given me the tools to be able to include my spouse and, let them know the things that we're going through, because they're a huge help. They're more help than I think than what we give them credit. So it's been life-changing.
It sounds like you're no longer going through it by yourself, but you recognize the importance of, including your family in on it and not having to shoulder all that by yourself. But there are those out there who can help you through it.
Absolutely.
And same question for you. How are you today after your own journey?
I feel like I'm in a great spot. I was blessed. I love Kendra more than words can ever describe. She is my best friend, my rock. When, people say she is my rock. She has taught me so much, going back to when we worked together. She was always the baddest detective I ever worked with. You need a dope case solved, you need something investigated, she was the go-to. And now she is leaps and bounds ahead of what she was as a detective in the mental health side of it. So having her on my team and being able to go home to her smiling face every day, I'm truly blessed. And it truly is a team effort. When she says she's my partner just as much as anyone here. Fortunately, I get to see her every day at work now, which is awesome. But being able to come home to a spouse that is so supportive, you can't put a price tag on it. And, work-wise, we have come so far, because going back to when I started as a cop in 2001, there was no mental health coordinator. Nobody cared. Get back on duty. There was no time off or mental health time. So we've come so far in law enforcement to where now it really is okay to not be okay. If people are going through stuff at home, we can get them the leave they need, the help they need. And as a position I'm in now as a captain, I'm very honored. My days of working the road as a cop are over. I'm not out making dope cases or taking guns off the road, doing any of that stuff. My mission now is to make sure everybody that works with me has everything they need. And most importantly, what I've come to learn, through Kendra, is the most important thing they need is support and being there for them. And I have to, so I'm not a person that opens up a lot, but I have to open up and share my experiences to these younger troopers that, hey, when there's something critical goes down, this is what you're possibly going to experience. You're going to decompress, because I don't think any of us had that hand on our shoulder saying you're going to decompress. It may be 30 minutes after the event, it may be 2 days, it may be a week after, but you're going to decompress. So now, one of my main jobs is passing this information on and opening those avenues of mental health to keep our troopers or officers as healthy as they can possibly be throughout their career, so they could live that retirement and live the good life that they've earned through, going through events that no human being should go through. So it's really through cops, through the counseling, through my wife. I'm in an amazing place now, I think, to be able to pass this stuff on. And I'm so proud of our agency and our upper command for, we do need a mental health coordinator. And we're open-minded. We're going to bring her in, and we're going to fix some problems. And we've already, we started the ball rolling on this going back a couple of years. So I'm super proud to work for the Nevada Highway Patrol, because times are changing, and we're right there on the front lines with them.
Just remember to keep smiling when those student loans come in.
You're supposed to pay those?
I want to thank the three of you for being with us today and for sharing your stories. Thank you so much, Max and Kendra. Very appreciative for everything that you shared with us, and just the opportunity to talk to you really about the programs and the resources that are out there, but also how important it is for officers to be in touch with that, because there is. And you just said it, things are so much different these days than in years past. And we really need our officers out there to take advantage of what's available to them. So three of you, thank you so much. And hopefully we have a chance to work together in the future.
A special thanks to Matt Garcia for hosting today's episode of Lifeline, and Anthony Munoz, Kendra Still, and Max Morgan for sharing their stories, perspectives, and insights into the experiences of law enforcement professionals. Precinct 444 is committed to providing valuable content for all of our shows, and especially for Lifeline, as we see this show as another avenue to publish relevant, potentially life-saving content for our law enforcement listeners. As it so happens, this episode is Precinct 444's 100th episode. So thank you for sticking with us over the last year, and we can't wait to see what the future holds. Please subscribe to Precinct 444 on your favorite podcasting platform to stay connected and to receive our latest content as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, comments, and feedback to precinct444@nleomf.org. You can help us make our content even better. The National Law Enforcement Museum is located at 444 East Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and is dedicated to telling the story of American law enforcement. We expand and enrich the relationship between law enforcement and the community through educational journeys, immersive exhibitions, and insightful programs. Find us online at lawenforcementmuseum.org and stay tuned for more podcast content from Precinct 444. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you at the precinct.